With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
From the VON Newsline, this is the VON Major Newscast.
Good evening, I am Tammy Reed in with your VON Major News Package for today, Thursday, May 16, 2019. In all these stories, nationally, Alcibiades David responds to cannabis situation on St. Kitts, and newly constructed pier opens at Wally. Regionally, Antigua and Barbuda's ambassador urges U.S. to seek extension of WTO waiver for the Caribbean. Internationally, China has threatened to retaliate against U.S. restrictions on the Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei. And in sports, Milwaukee Bucks beat Toronto Raptors in first Eastern Conference Finals. We'll have the details to these and other stories after this short break.
Another look.
Different from how you've seen it before.
Another look.
Takes an in-depth look into business, politics, science, technology, religion, and more.
Another look.
Featuring documentaries from the BBC, regional features, and local ones too.
Another look.
Every Monday at 3 p.m. on the Eastern Caribbean's powerhouse, VON.
Welcome back, and now the national news in detail. The case involving Alcibiades David, a U.S. citizen, who was charged with illegal importation into St. Kitts for possession of cannabis with intent to supply, importation of cannabis, and importation of a restricted item, spoke to the VON Newsline and gave his initial reason for arriving to St. Kitts.
When we arrived, I really felt that we were going to be well received. At the time, our partner on the ground, Dr. Douglas, he was all of a sudden he was nervous of being arrested by the authorities. There was a rumor at the time that he was going to be arrested, and simultaneously we were, treated very, very, very badly. And in fact, my partner, Chase, originally charged with a drugs charge, a drug suspicion. That was finally tested. It turned out it wasn't narcotics, that it was in fact his medicine, and he's still being detained now he's been charged for arguing with a police officer. I didn't expect that.
David said that this issue was blown out of proportion. The VON Newsline tried to contact former Prime Minister Dr. Douglas, but was unsuccessful. Mr. David said that he contacted the authorities.
We put out a press release a week before. We contacted the customs officials. We filed a form on the plane that we were bringing in hemp. Well in advance, we made lots of advance notice. Nobody responded, by the way, from St. Kitts Airport. From our understanding, the law in St. Kitts is the same as the British law. It's exactly the same as the British law. The Drug Act is the same Drug Act as the one in the UK.
The Director of Public Prosecution, DPP, which is in part, says the finding is consistent with the statutory definition of cannabis as defined by the Drugs Prevention and Abatement of Misuse and Abuse of Drugs Act, Chapter 9.08 of the Laws of St. Christopher and Nevis. Consequently, acting on his advice, David was arrested and charged on Thursday, May 9, 2019. In related news, Chase Urgen of Colorado, associate of Alcibiades David, billionaire and heir to Coca-Cola fortune, was formally charged with 3 offenses on May 15, 2019. The offenses were the use of threatening language, resisting arrest, and battery on police. The offenses took place at Park Hyatt, St. Kitts on May 12, 2019. This comes after Mr. David was granted new bail conditions after being charged for possession of controlled drugs, possession with intent to supply, and importation of a controlled drug into the Federation. Both Mr. David and Mr. Urgen was arrested on May 7, 2019 at the RLB International Airport on St. Kitts. David remains in custody pending a bail hearing. Water taxi operators here on Nevis will now have access to the newly constructed pier at Owali. The pier was commissioned on Wednesday, May 15, 2019. The VON Newsline spoke to Premier of Nevis, Honorable Mark Brantley, and this was his comment.
Water taxi operators seem delighted at the new facility. I would want to thank the Yahwehs for the forbearance and the patience over the years that their pier was being used. They had, of course, given notice to the water taxi operators that they would have to discontinue because of the impact on the hotel. And I want to thank Alistair Yahweh in particular, whom I spoke to and who relented and agreed that we should try to get the new government pier open quickly so as to provide some relief to the Owali Hotel. So I thank them for that, and I believe all of Nevis is grateful.
We also contacted one of the water taxi operators that will be using the facility, Mr. Vincent Perkins, who had this to say.
It creates a better impression for an arrival to Nevis for the first time. I just want to thank the Nevis Island Administration, Alexis Travers and Mr. Brantley for a well put together project that is well needed for the island.
Mr. Vincent Perkins. St. Kitts and Nevis's Foreign Affairs Minister and Premier of Nevis, Honorable Mark Brantley, has confirmed free visa waiver access to Albania for nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis. He spoke about the relevance of a visa waiver.
It makes, of course, countries more accessible to our people and makes our country more accessible to them. It's very relevant for touristic purposes because the visa free is only for tourists. It's not for work or for study or to live. That would be a different process. Clearly opens up our countries to each other, and so we're allowed to get what we refer to as more people-to-people contact.
The minister said that the other positive aspect of the visa waiver is that it increases the number of countries that a person can travel to.
And I'm very proud to say that as of the addition of Albania, we are now up to 155 countries and territories around the world that citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis can travel to without a visa. And that means that we are number one in the OECS.
We asked Mr. Brantley about the status of the visa waiver with Canada.
Canada has indicated to us that they are considering our concerns carefully. They've looked at the reforms that we would have made to address the issues that they raised in 2014. But thus far, we have not yet had the indication from them that our visa-free access will be restored.
Foreign Affairs Minister and Premier of Nevis, Honorable Mark Brantley. Resident of Nevis and Chair of the Foundation for Social Concerns, or SAVE SKN, Mrs. Ruth Powell, was a guest on the Let's Talk program on Tuesday, May 14, 2019. Mrs. Powell spoke on the topic, Community Responsiveness to Societal Issues. The topic was launched in response to the rising crime in St. Kitts and Nevis. With a core membership of 10 individuals, including a few ex-prisoners, Ms. Powell went into detail on the reasons why the non-profit group was launched and its role on the Let's Talk program on Tuesday.
The Foundation for Social Concerns, formerly called SAVE SKN, was founded in response to the rising crime, specifically in Nevis and generally in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. In our search for solutions, it has become obvious that without social justice, there will be no solution to rising crime. A society that does not provide justice for all its members will be susceptible to rising criminal behavior. Social justice includes access to fair and non-discriminatory judicial system, equal acceptance of all individuals regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or financial position, equal treatment of each member of the society in terms of respect and dignity. All persons should be entitled to food, clothing, shelter, and dignity, regardless of race, religion, general sexual orientation, or financial position. Therefore, the role of the Foundation for Social Concerns extends to seeking judicial and social justice.
In explaining some of the areas the group has been involved in, such as the Philo Wallace case, the VON Newsline contacted Mrs. Powell. Chairperson of the Foundation for Social Concerns, Mrs. Ruth Powell. Mrs. Powell also clarified some misunderstanding of the nature of the group, stating that, and I quote, they are not anti-government or anti-police. She invited other persons who share the same concerns to join the group. Ms. Cassandra Chapman, the guest instructor for the Introduction to Hat Making Millinery Workshop, called into the On the Mark program last evening to explain some of the hat forms she does and will be teaching on during the workshop.
I am currently making fascinators, big brim hats. They also called hatchinators, cocktail hats for women, and I also make fedoras for men and for women as well. They will be learning to block, the blocks that go, that makes the hat, with a fabric called cinnamate.
Currently reporting 20 individuals that have registered, Ms. Chapman indicated that the registered persons will be introduced to the art style and decorate their hats. On the final day of the workshop, May 24, 2019, it will conclude with a tea party, a fashion show, and certificates upon completing the workshop will be distributed. The Millinery to Hat Making Workshop is organized by the Department of Gender Affairs that Ms. Cassandra Chapman will introduce the art form to the citizens of Nevis from May 20, 2019 to May 24, 2019 from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. daily. Based on the success of this workshop, she hopes that they will be able to make the hats on their own and research the art style, and she also hopes to return next year to teach further on the art style. She also stated that people should not always be consumers all the time, but also producers. Finally, in February of this year, the St. Kitts Christian Council issued a statement on the church stance against violent acts in the community and the disregard of human life. On March 15, 2019, host of the St. Kitts radio program Policing With You, Police Inspector Francis asked his guest, member of the St. Kitts Christian Council, Archdeacon Isaiah Phillip, to explain the reasons why the statement was issued.
It was a time when the community had been touched, by some very violent activities, and we always feel as the church that as we proclaim a gospel of peace, whenever there is a situation that kind of threatens and in any way seeks to destroy the peace and the well-being of the community, that we have a duty to say to the community, that is not our way. We want to call people back to the state where communities are working together, working with our security forces to build communities and societies of peace and non-violence. And so it is in that context of our overall proclamation of the gospel of peace and well-being for all people we issued that statement.
The statement called upon various members of the community, such as parents, law enforcement, political entities, and government, to play their part in the fight against crime. Released February 20, 2019, it also called upon members of the community to examine the ways in which we are raising our children and the kinds of rhetoric and intolerant behavior that we are modeling that could lead to these types of callous disregard for the sanctity of life. He also spoke on how parents can play their part in the fight against crime.
Parents can do a lot in terms of making sure that they nurture the children with the kind of love and support and positive engagement and involvement that would help them to, in their own life, articulate whatever is positive and whatever is life-affirming and life-supporting. So we encourage parents, get your children involved in those positive things, the dance groups, the Sunday schools, the karate groups, all of these things that is going to help them to build a positive sense of themselves. So as they step out in anything, whatever negative come their way, they instantly reject it. That is the kind of engagement. And the parents themselves in the home, they have to begin to give them that positive involvement and encouragement.
In the interview, he also encouraged lawmakers and the police to collaborate in fighting crime, which he states is a developmental problem for everyone. That's the national news segment. You can visit our website at www.vonradio.com or check us out on Facebook at Von Radio or our Von Radio YouTube channel for these and other stories. News from across the region is next.
Ladies and gentlemen, this here's another one for the steppers.
Swipe to win big in 2019. That's right, the Bank of Nevis Limited is once again giving you, our valued customers, a chance to win big. Just swipe or use your Bond Visa credit card for US $100 for a chance to win a cruise for two, an iPhone XS, or a grocery dash at Best Buy Supermarket.
Say what?
Sign up for a Bond Visa credit card and automatically be entered for a chance to win. This offer ends August 31st, 2019. So tell your friends and family to swipe to win big with the Bank of Nevis. The Bank of Nevis Limited, improving the quality of life. Like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram.
Welcome back, and now the regional news in detail. Antigua and Barbuda's ambassador to the United States, Sir Ronald Saunders, recently urged that the U.S. government and Congress seek an extension of a waiver to allow Caribbean countries to continue to benefit from the Caribbean Basin Economic Recovery Act, CBERA. Saunders testified before the U.S. International Trade Commission, which is investigating the impact of U.S. industries, persons, and the U.S. economy of CBERA that was enacted in 1983. CBERA is part of the Caribbean Basin Initiative launched by then U.S. President Ronald Reagan and kept in place by successive U.S. governments. Saunders pointed out that CBERA and the Caribbean Basin Trade Partnership Act, CBTPA, which grants preferential access for Caribbean exports to the U.S. market, is only possible because of a waiver from the World Trade Organization. That waiver expires at the end of this year on December 31st. Saunders told the Commission that over the years, the U.S. had benefited more from the existing trade arrangements than the 17 Caribbean countries for whom benefits were intended. Out of Guyana, Finance Minister Winston Jordan on Wednesday asked Parliament to approve $3.4 billion Guyanese dollars for the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, to conduct electoral polls. The supplementary funding request is expected to be debated and passed by the National Assembly next week. The move comes as GECOM has to get ready in the event that the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, ruled that the no confidence motion was valid. Already, GECOM says it is going ahead with house-to-house registration to extract a voters list to hold elections in November 2019. CCJ judges have remarked that GECOM should always be ready for elections to be held at any time, given the provisions in the Constitution. GECOM's legal officer has advised the 7-member commission and the chief elections officer to revise the now expired National Register of Voters. The Bipartisan Elections Commission is divided over whether there should be house-to-house registration, with the 3 pro-coalition commissioners and chairman retired Justice James Patterson in favor. The opposition People's Progressive Party is opposed to house-to-house registration and has even moved to High Court for the process to be squashed. Finally, news out of the BVI. The British Virgin Islands has had an overwhelming number of fires since the start of the year and is now at high risk for more fire disasters than potentially could be major. This is according to Chief Fire Officer Zebalion McLean, who told publication BVI News the territory has recorded an unusually high average of 6 fires per month since January 2019. McLean said these alarming numbers put the fire department at great unease for what is anticipated to be an active summer period, since fires are known to happen then. The chief also explained why his department has been constantly urging the public to cease burning of all kinds. He said the territory's current drought-like conditions, coupled with its high temperatures, create a recipe for disaster. Back in November last year, the U.S. state of California experienced what the deadliest and most destructive fire in the state's history. It resulted in 85 civilian deaths and destroyed 90% of a neighboring town that a population close to the size of the entire BVI. That's it for our regional stories. Stay with us for news around the world. Welcome back, and now the international news in detail. China has threatened to retaliate against the U.S. decision to impose trade restrictions on the Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei. The foreign ministry said Beijing opposed other countries imposing unilateral sanctions on Chinese companies and would take threats to safeguard the interests of its businesses. The Commerce Ministry spokesperson referred to the U.S. as a bully, adding that the pressure from Washington has led to setbacks in trade talks. He also rejected claims that working with Chinese companies carried a risk for national security.
China has emphasized many times that the concept of national security should not be abused and that it should not be used as a tool for trade protectionism. China hopes that the relevant country respects market rules and creates a fair, transparent and predictable business environment for companies from other countries, including China.
On Wednesday, the Trump administration effectively blocked Huawei equipment from being used in U.S. networks on the grounds of national security. Norway has attempted to facilitate high-level talks between Venezuela's government and political opposition, both sides have said. The government and the opposition have been engaged in a bitter power struggle since January. Reports of a meeting between the two sides in Norway's capital, Oslo, first emerged on Thursday. They were later confirmed by Juan Guaido, Venezuela's ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva. Opposition leader Juan Guaido said there are some envoys in Norway, but denied talks were underway with President Nicolas Maduro's government. Microsoft and Sony have formed a partnership on video game streaming despite being fierce competitors. It is expected Sony will use Microsoft Azure cloud service to host its upcoming PlayStation streaming service. Microsoft has been trialing a streaming offer of its own under its Xbox brand. The firm said they would also work together on semiconductors and artificial intelligence applications. Microsoft chief executive said Sony has always been a leader in both entertainment and technology, and the collaboration we announced today builds on this history of innovation. Finally, the bodies of 11 Nigerian soldiers missing since Tuesday's ambush have been discovered, bringing the death toll to 28. Nigeria and other countries in the Sahel have been facing a growing militant threat from several Islamist groups. The BBC's Louis Duwatts reports.
This was the deadliest attack recorded in western Niger, where government troops and their international allies are fighting affiliates of Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group. There has been no claim of responsibility yet. Authorities said it was a complex attack in which the heavily armed militants planted improvised explosive devices. This happened near the town of Tongo Tongo, where 4 U.S. Special Forces and 5 Nigerian soldiers were killed in an ambush in 2017.
That brings us to the end of our news segments. The latest in sports is next.
The month of May is the month of change, and it is time to revolutionize the way you copy, scan, and print with a new Canon printer from the TDC Business Center and City Drugstore Nevis Limited. Trade in your old printer and get 25% off a brand new Canon printer in any model and 15% off each Canon printer ink you buy. Plus, enjoy specials on selected models that'll have you saving even more. May is Canon month. Visit the TDC Business Center and City Drugstore Nevis Limited for more details.
Welcome back, and now the sports in detail. In basketball, last night's Eastern Conference final scores are Toronto Raptors 100 and Milwaukee Bucks 108. This evening's game in Western Conference Finals, which starts at 9 o'clock, will be the Portland Trail Blazers versus the Golden State Warriors. Golden State Warriors leads 1-0. In tennis, Johanna Konta recovered from a set down to defeat American world number 8 Sloane Stephens 6-7, 6-4, 6-1 and reached the Italian Open third round. The Briton 27 made light work of the deciding set to record a 7th clay court victory of the year in 2 hours and 33 minutes in Rome. Due to persistent rain on Wednesday, the Briton will play twice on Thursday and faces Venus Williams next. Finally, in more tennis news, Nick Kyrgios admitted emotions got the better of me after forfeiting his second-round match with Norwegian Casper Ruud at the Italian Open. The Australian 24 was in the deciding set when he was given a game penalty, reportedly for swearing, to trail 2-1. He then kicked a bottle, threw down his racket, hurled a chair on the court, picked up his bag and walked off. Kyrgios was fined €20,000 for unsportsmanlike conduct and also lost his prize money. In addition to the prize money of £29,366, he forfeited the 45th ranking points gained during the tournament and was told to cover the cost of his hospitality. Writing on Instagram, he said, "Very eventful day to say the least. Emotions got the better of me, and I just wanted to say that the atmosphere was crazy out there today. Just super unfortunate that it had to end in a default." That's it for the sports segment. The general weather forecast is next. Welcome back, and now the local weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis. Weather tonight, fair to partly cloudy with a 20% or slight chance of showers. Weather tomorrow, partly cloudy with a 20% or slight chance of showers. Winds east at 15 to 28 kilometers per hour or 8 to 15 knots. Seas 1.5 meters or 5 feet. And sunrise tomorrow is at 5:39 a.m. And that's how we wrap up the major news package for today, Thursday, May 16, 2019. Before we go, let's take a look at our headlines once again. Nationally, Alcibiades David responds to cannabis situation on St. Kitts. A newly constructed pier opens at Wally. Regionally, Antigua and Barbuda's ambassador urges U.S. to seek extension of WTO waiver for the Caribbean. Internationally, China has threatened to retaliate against U.S. restrictions on the Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei. And in sports, Milwaukee Bucks beat Toronto Raptors in first Eastern Conference Finals. On behalf of the rest of the news team, I am Tammy Reed, wishing you a pleasant evening.